Instant team ban.
What's cracking, ladies and gentlemen? FortyeniN coming at you with another community shoutcast for the UGC Dota League Season 2. We're loading into the quarterfinals for the Easten invite, the best of 3 series between FortyeniN and Tuzki or Husky. Both of these teams are currently ranked, I believe FortyeniN are at the 4th and Tuzki or Husky 5th in the rankings, so they are one of the top 8 teams to make it through. I believe the winner of the series will be able to make it on into the semifinals that will be happening next week, as this is elimination. So Tuzki or Husky and FortyeniN, both teams hanging on in. Looks like FortyeniN opting to go for very unconventional Centaur War on the first ban, while Tuzki or Husky, they opt to ban out the Terrorblade as well as the Viper. Terrorblade, a little bit of a wasted ban, especially in the first banning stage, as he's a hero that has been quite heavily nerfed, especially in 8.2c, where I believe his illusions take 140% more damage, so now they receive 460% damage from all sources. It really has drastically impacted his flash farming speed, as well as his ability to effectively split push. But that being said, Terrorblade's biggest asset is his ability to farm at the same speed of Anti-Mage without having to farm Battle Fury first. FortyeniN opting to ban out the Centaur as well as the Pandarian Brewmaster, so both very durable frontline heroes that rely on the massive amount of initiation from the Blink Dagger, as well as having a fairly effective laning stage, especially if Centaur happens to be 1v1. Centaur Warrunner, probably the most common first pick as far as the offlane is concerned. So he is a very viable ban just due to the fact that he does provide a lot of utility. Of course, Tidehunter first pick coming up from FortyeniN, that's the added benefit of choosing to ban out a less versatile or less strong offlaner compared to the Tide. So you ban out the Centaur to make sure that the enemy team's forced to ban out the Tide, otherwise you get to pick it up. But in doing so, they give away the Death Prophet to Tuzki or Husky. So FortyeniN deliberating on their second pick, led of course by their drafter and captain Broder. He's known for his unconventional drafts, so UGTFO, their offlane player, most likely going to be playing the Tide. Broder, he does like to occasionally experiment with dual lanes, but with the Tidehunter to pick up, most likely going to be tri-lane, unless they decide to run 2 heroes in the mid lane, which they do from time to time, especially if they decide to pick up a hero such as the Phantom Assassin. They instead go for the line, most likely going to be the support player in the 5 position. Cox going to be picking up that line. And Tuzki or Husky starting to deliberate now on the second pickup as they opted to ban out the Viper. Viper, despite being nerfed with the fact that Corrosive Skin no longer applies globally, so if you take an instance of global damage, it won't proc on the doer, so it's a bit of a buff to heroes such as the Ancient Apparition or Zeus, who before, every time they used their ultimate, would be slow to a crawl, especially if they're trying to retreat and they happen to accidentally clip the Viper. Viper's Corrosive Skin is now capped at 1.4k range and no longer will reflect upon itself, so it actually is a bit of a buff to Viper, since it means that before, if you picked up a hero such as a Morphling or Shadow Demon who could create an illusion of the Viper, you could actually permanently trigger Corrosive Skin, at least until the illusion died, so it was a great way to control the Viper. Now you can't do that as Corrosive Skin can't proc itself. Ember Spirit ban coming in from Tuzki or Husky, very powerful respect ban. Of course, Ken Killer, the 1 position player from FortyeniN, who does play an exceptionally good Ember Spirit. Ember Spirit also a very powerful ban, especially against heroes such as the Death Prophet, since he does provide a lot of burst damage. And it's a hero that requires you to constantly shut down, lest he grow the control, since once he reaches the point of critical mass, usually when he's picked up something along the lines of Phase, Drum, Battle Fury into a Daedalus, he then gets to the point where he could effectively decide an entire team fight off the back of 2 Slates of Fist. And when he reaches that point, it becomes very difficult to push high ground against the team with the Ember Spirit, as he does help you drag out games. Now opting to ban out the Gorgon, so Medusa, as well as now starting to deliberate for the 4th ban. While Tuzki and Husky, they ban out the Razor in conjunction with the Ember. It's very interesting they opted to ban out the Razor, since Razor, while a very powerful hero, especially in that mid lane matchup, is actually fairly even against Death Prophet, since Death Prophet isn't so dependent on her right click damage just because she has access to the Crypt Swarm to do the spam out to really control the lane, as well as the fact that Death Prophet, once she gets a few points in the Witchcraft, she's got enough movement speed to maneuver around the Razor. But that being said, still is a fairly even matchup, since if Razor does get a single good static link off, especially at level 1, can get enough denies to really start to shut down Death Prophet, since while she's got an excellent amount of it's nuke damage coming in from a Crypt Swarm, her attack animation has an awful amount of front swing. I believe she's got 0.6 or 0.7 for her front swing, so it means that it's much more difficult to last hit effectively with the Death Prophet. You might effectively have to minus 5 points of damage off her starting pool just to get a proper feel for what it's actually like lasting as the Death Prophet, in conjunction to the Razor, who has got an excellent front swing, I believe 0.2 for him, and almost instant attack animation. Very easy for the Razor to outlast the Death Prophet, especially if he gets 1 or 2 ticks of that static link. Nagasarian ban actually now coming up from FortyeniN, had a little bit of a word twister earlier where he mixed up Gorgon with the Nagasarian, but looks like he decided to ban that one out as well. So both of these heroes provide a massive amount of durability, and of course a very excellent way to control the slot, since the Dusa is tanky enough that she could actually disregard the slot completely. If she pops the Shadow Dance, Slark really can't do anything. Naga Siren, of course, can use the Song of the Siren to isolate Slark, so when Slark pops Shadow Dance, you immediately use Song of the Siren to disable the Shadow Dance. Without the Shadow Dance, Slark is easy food. Yeah, nah, mate. They pick up the Slark, is most likely going to be played by King Killer, who's their Slark player, and he decides to go for a bit of an unconventional build, although he goes for the old school Slark build, which is Shadow Blade, ASAP, as opposed to the Blade Dagger, which is much more conventional pickup in the competitive scene. Of course, the drawback of the Shadow Blade is you don't have that instant initiation with the blink into pounce. It also cripples your mobility, especially if they happen to have Dust or Sentries, which they most likely will be doing so. Of course, the benefit of the Shadow Blade is it does give you more carry potential, because it gives you the damage as well as the attack speed to work with. It also forces the enemy supports to have to waste their gold buying sentries, so you exert the invisibility tax on them. So that could be the primary reason for doing so. And if you do pick up a Shadow Blade early on enough, if you're able to find 1 or 2 kills with it, you can start to snowball very, very quickly. Tuzki or Husky, I'll pick up the Ogre Magi in conjunction with the Jakiro. So far they haven't picked up an offlaner, so Jakiro in the offlane role, very powerful. In the OK Dota 2 Cup qualifiers, where I was casting it a few weeks ago, Jakiro is actually the most common offlaner after the Centaur Warrunner, just due to the fact that he provides a massive amount of damage as well as control. Jakiro in a 1v1 matchup against Tidehunter actually fares very well, as he can spam out the Tide. Jakiro isn't dependent on his right-click damage, unlike a lot of other offlaners. As a ranged hero, very difficult for Tide to be able to land that Anchor Smash on him. Jakiro also can control the Tide and harass him down using the Dual Breath, as well as the Liquid Fire. In that case, in the Tidehunter v Jakiro offlane matchup, you usually choose to forego the point in Ice Path at 4, and choose instead to go for 2 points in Dual Breath, as well as 2 points in the Liquid Fire. Give yourself a lot more damage, unless you expect your supports to rotate to that offlane, in which case you want to pick up a casual point in the Ice Path just to provide that extra formless setup. Otherwise, going for the max Dual Breath, max Liquid Fire build gives you a massive amount of damage, especially if you are able to pick up a Yule Scepter very early on, since Dual Breath also functions as a way for you to be able to find Flash Farm, as well as be able to zone out and control the Tide quite effectively in that matchup. Of course, Jakiro can also be run as a 5, as in this match case, the Ogre Magi takes farm priority as the 4, just due to the fact that he scales better with items than Jakiro, and you've got easy setup with the Fire Blast into the Ice Path. So you've got the quick 1-2 punch with the Fire Blaster set up for the Ice Path, follow up with the Ignite into the Dual Breath, and you do deal a fair amount of damage. Of course, the only drawback to this is when you do decide to play Jakiro in that 5 position role, you want him to pick up level 6 ASAP, just so he can get access to either the Necrofire or another point in the Ice Path for him to become a lot more versatile, because you have to max out the Liquid Fire ASAP for it to be relevant. Otherwise, if Liquid Fire is maxed out a lot later on, so in the 10 to 15 minute mark, as opposed to in the first 10 minutes, Jakiro loses a massive amount of his pushing presence. If he's able to pick up level 7 very early on, the reason why he's such a powerful offlane hero is he's able to hit his power peak with the Liquid Fire far faster than the enemy team can really contain him, unless they decide to commit a lot of resources. That means that their core hero, so the Death Prophet, or their 1 position farmer, gets a lot of space to be the farm while you're forced to deal with the Jakiro. Or of course, if you decide to deal with the 1 or the 2, then Jakiro is able to melt down all your towers. So it puts the enemy team in a difficult scenario. If you run Jakiro in the support position role, you don't have access to enough experience for Jakiro to really make good use of the Liquid Fire, so you have to pick up a very aggressive core hero that can synergize well with Jakiro. So picking up an offlane hero such as a Clockwork Goblin to synergize with Jakiro, because it gives you that 1-2 punch or the hookshot cog into the Macropire, or even without the macro, just throwing in the Ice Path can help set up kills for the Clockwork. Otherwise, Jakiro's power in that 5 position role, just because he has such a slow cast rate as well as a slow turn rate, very difficult to reliably land spells on his own. It's the reason why Jakiro's run in that 3 position role, so you can guarantee him being able to pick up a Yule Scepter ASAP, since once he gets that yield, he gets set up kills on his own. Yeah, nah mate, going for one of their favorite heroes, the Omni Knight. Brodo was able to use this to absolutely phenomenal success, and of course, when mate pick up an Omni Knight, you have to anticipate a 5th pick Phantom Assassin. That's the only reason why they usually pick up the Omni Knight, is due to the fact that the Phantom Assassin Omni Knight combination, you repel the Phantom Assassin, you can't do anything to her. I'm not 100% certain if the Dark Pack will actually purge off repel, so the interaction with Omni Knight Slark won't be as strong. Of course, you do have to pounce the setup for an easy purification, since Omni Knight's biggest strength is he provides a ridiculous amount of defensive capability, since when you pop the Guardian Angel, you shrug off all the damage coming in from the Death Prophet. Repel makes you disregard the control coming in from the Ogre as well as the Jakiro, and Tuzki or Husky picking up a Lycan means that it could actually be a 3-position Jakiro, would make a lot more sense then, very EG style lineup where you have the Jakiro able to pick up very early Yule Scepter as well as the early maxed out Liquid Fire. Lycanthrope picks up Medallion into Vladmir's Offering. Once Death Prophet picks up her Exorcism at level 9, you group up as 5, you start smacking down towers, and you're able to find such a massive amount of farm on your core heroes from all those tower kills and from the massive amount of AoE team fight that you have. You usually are able to secure a lot of kills early on. That you can leverage that towards a win, at least in the first 30 minutes, before the enemy team's cores start to come online. Very effective draft against the Slark, since Slark really needs the first 10-15 minutes to be able to find his farm, especially if he's going for that Shadow Blade route. Until he's able to find that Shadow Blade, his ganking presence, while it is powerful if he's able to land the pounce, isn't going to be as effective just because you need to find Slark's first big item before you want to start ganking. So whether that be a Blink Dagger or a Shadow Blade, until you find that big item, you want to keep farming, keep controlling your lane, since otherwise, unless of those ganks work out exceptionally well, you're able to find a lot of kills and a lot of gold from them, Slark tapers off very quickly without them. So that's the reason why Slark tends to be a bit of as a carry hero on the switch. For the first 10 to 15 minutes until he finds his core item, he's going to be playing like any other one position farmer, right clicking away. He does have some kill potential with that pounce. However, he's going to be prioritizing last hits. Once he gets that item, then you suddenly flick a switch and he goes on the rampage, hunting the map, trying to kill everything he can. Very similar to what Clinks. Slark has a very powerful timing based carry hero that's entirely reliant on how quickly he could get his first big item. Lycanthrope, very good counter to the Slark, just due to the fact that if Slark is outside of Shadow Dance, Lycanthrope can actually man-fight him and probably win the matchup just due to the fact that Lycan, especially if he goes for the Medallion to Courage route, absolutely ridiculous amount of DPS early on. Lycanthrope is the carry hero that hits the hardest, the earliest. So he'll hit his prime once he picks up, just with the Medallion Courage and the Vladmir's Offering, he can outfight most carry heroes at least until the 30-minute mark when they've picked up another core item and maybe something else. So Lycanthrope's biggest strength is he hits the ground running, and he's able to maintain that momentum throughout the majority of the game, just due to the fact that he punishes any mistake you make at least 3 times more, just because he's able to take an additional objective due to his excessive pushing speed, as well as the fact that he can also provide a lot of reconnaissance with his wolves. So we'll have to see how good the Lycanthrope players' micro skills are with the wolves. And yeah, no, man, actually opting to go for a Legion Commander, so this will be a mid-lane Legion Commander. Unless they decide to switch it up and send Slark into the mid lane, but since Slark most likely will be played by King Killer, should be seeing a Slark tri-lane in conjunction with the Lion as well as the Omni Knight. Omni Knight going to be played by Broder, will be rotating. So you usually see Broder start with a TP scroll as soon as the game begins, just to ensure that if there's a gank attempt happening anywhere in the map, he could TP in, provide that repel as well as that purification to help turn these ganks around. And so will be Mule, their 2-position player, going to be playing that Legion Commander. And Legion Commander against the Death Prophet, it's actually a fairly even matchup for the Legion Commander, just due to the fact that Death Prophet relies on being able to bully the enemy mid-outer lane. And you can't really bully a Legion Commander since she could use Overwhelming Ult to find CS from a distance, she could use to press the attack to keep herself in lane. And we've got the Phoenix pickup coming in from Tuzki or Husky. Phoenix is a hero that was recently added into Captain's Mode, has been seeing some use, at least in the Southeast Asia scene. I haven't really been seeing him too much in the Australian New Zealand scene, so this is actually the first game in the Oz New Zealand scene that I have actually casted with the Phoenix being picked up. Tuzki or Husky, going to be the JK, playing as the Phoenix. It looks like it is actually going to be a support position Jakiro. As Phoenix, you can't really run him that support position role just because he needs levels and he needs farm to really be relevant. And Mule picking up that Legion Commander indicates that it is going to be that mid-position Legion Commander. I actually haven't seen Mule play Legion Commander, but I believe he has been practicing that hero quite a lot, since that's usually how we run. Has a fairly small pool of heroes that he can play, but he plays those heroes over and over again until he has them down cold. So Legion Commander in that mid lane most likely will be going something along the lines of Treads Bottle into the Blink Dagger Blade Mail. Tends to be the most effective pickup, but of course Mule, if I've learned anything from watching his Axe game up against, I believe it was Team Joey, he can throw you for a loop by picking up some truly unconventional items. So going to introduce players from Mate, the super team coming in from Dunedin, UGTFO, going to be the offlane player as Tidehunter, setting on boots first as well as safety ward, just to make sure that he's able to find some farm in the offlane. Cox going to be the 5-position line, Broder is the 4-position Omni Knight, this time actually not starting with the TP scroll, but does have some gold saved, so we can always buy it in the side shop. Ken Killer, the only official player from Mate, as I believe the others haven't actually changed their official player name on the website. Going to be playing the 1-position Slark, most likely going to be going for a Shadow Blade this game, as since he's got Mule to be able to initiate with the Blink Dagger, and Legion Commander most likely going to be going Blink. And over for the boys in Tuzki or Husky, we've got the JK, going to be the Phoenix, and the offlane Boots first, whilst the safety ward already being placed preemptively, could actually get de-warded out quite early on, as I believe Cox, never mind, they actually don't have sentry wards on them, so that safety ward will go unpunished. Going to be the 4-position Ogre Magi. Well, in this case, Ogre might actually even be the 5 as Shakira. You might want to give him more farm priority early on to ensure that he's able to pick up level 7. Going to be played by Lithium. It's the 4/5 position Jakiro. I Suck Lol, who I believe is Tumbling. He actually hasn't changed his official player name as well, so this is what it pops up as. Going to be the 1 position Lycanthrope. And in the mid lane, we're going to be seeing Pork, the captain and drafter, going to be the 2 position Death Prophet. Broder and King Killer, cautiously guarding the rune. Looks like they do pick up the Bounty Rune in the top lane. Regen going to be picked up by Lithium, not going to be too happy with that one. And he is starting with a Sentry, so he's going to be using that to try to de-ward the safety ward coming in from Titan. Looks like he actually already has, so... Unless I've... Never mind, he actually placed it very cautiously over here. Actually, a bit very surprising. He opted not to go for a safety ward, instead placed it over here. So this could be indicative of the fact that they want to ensure that there's going to be no ganks happening from Mule from the enemy safe lane. But since the offlane support, the safe lane supports usually smoke rotate, not going to be as effective. We see Tumbling actually starting with Hell at 1 to provide his mid lane player. A bit more impetus in the mid lane by providing a lot more right click damage. Usually, otherwise, if you want to prioritize his own base damage, you will go for Feral Impulse. It's something that a lot of pro players usually do start with Hell at 1, especially if they go mid for the 1v1 matchup, or if they want to help assist their mid lane players. Since Death Prophet already see him missing 1 last hit, it is very difficult to last it effectively with Lotus boost. You have to always keep in mind that her front swing is incredibly high. Mule, which has taken an incredible amount of harassment damage. Legion Commander, hero that usually does very okay against Death Prophet because you can farm from a distance, and once he picks up level 2, you can start using that press the attack to give himself some sustain. As I believe at level 1, it's 150 heal that comes out, so it effectively serves as another bottle charge. And if you are able to ever secure runes against the Death Prophet, which we should be able to do so with the overwhelming odds, or with a little bit of help from the supports rotating, give you a bit more control. But that being said, Mule has to be very careful, as he can't afford to get too close to Pork or to push himself into that lethal range, especially since Pork's picked up level 3. So their level 2 Crypt Swarm, he can use that as a finisher to be able to bring down Mule, should he drop below 150 HP. UGTFO actually been quite heavily zoned out in the offlane, not even bothering to stay in lane. He's actually going to start stacking, clearing out Ancients, usually something I criticize him on not doing. So nice to see him do that for a change. The biggest advantage of the Tidehunter is the fact that he can do this, so a lot of offlaners, such as Centaur Warrunner, if they get zoned out in the offlane, very difficult for them to recover. Centaur can go into the jungle, but only if he goes for a point in return, and then once he's farmed up his Tranquil Boots. Tidehunter, he can keep stacking up his Ancients, and he could clear them out later on. Since he really only needs 2 points in the Kraken Shell and 2 points in the Anchor Smash, you ideally want more points for him to be able to farm it faster. But that's the absolute minimum that you need for you to be able to do so. It does give you a lot more farm than actually going to the jungle. Also provides you a massive influx of EXP towards your supports. I Suck Low, good recognition coming in from him. It's the biggest weakness of Lycanthrope is his level 1 wolves. Unless you're in a 1v1 matchup, against this fragile ranged hero, they don't really provide you all too much for the mana that you expend, especially against Titans. You could use Anchor Smash to not only damage the wolves, but also to reduce their attack speed, so you can't even use them to effectively help you last hit. So it's good to see him actually holding onto his mana, spamming out that Howl instead, to ensure that Pork in the mid lane has a much easier time against Mule. It's actually been quite heavily zoned out, and if we have a look at the offlane coming from Tuzki or Husky, the JK, spamming out Fire Spirits. This is the reason why Phoenix is such a powerful offlane hero, is he's able to apply pressure to the enemy cores from a distance. This is something that very few offlane heroes can reliably do, especially since Phoenix, he can spam this all day. For the JK, he can afford to play very aggressively because he's got that Icarus dive, La La La, who rotated top for a little bit of assistance. There was that Ignite on Broder. Broder, the Omniscience can't save you from 3rd degree burns, backs himself away. He's actually out of regen. He does have clarities though. Did opt to go for a very early point and repel. That's just give him a lot more pressure he can apply against the JK, especially since Phoenix's biggest weakness, the fact that he had 0 armor. And interesting to know that the JK actually started without the Ring of Protection. Conventional Phoenix starting build is you always start with a Ring of Protection, opposed to the Boots of Speed. You don't actually need Boots of Speed on the Phoenix that early on, just due to the fact that you've got Icarus dive to get you out of a sticky situation. While I say that, in the bottom lane, Lithium gets an Ice Path on UGTFO who tanks it like a champ. Not going to be too fussed though, as Lithium doesn't really have any follow-up. He's got the Liquid Fire. That's all he really has to say for himself. The biggest strength of Jakiro, if you do run him that support position role, is the fact that you can spam out Liquid Fire to zone up the offlaner. But usually, the 1 point in the Dual Breath at 1's actually going to be a lot more effective, just because it applies the snare. So you get at least 2 right clicks in before they're able to safely disengage. Mule picks himself up a Haste Rune, probably going to be opting to max out the Press the Attack after his overwhelming odds, to ensure that he has a lot more sustain, and it does give you more DPS at earlier levels. Since the Moment of Courage, it's the ability that scales best, so you don't really need to want to max that early on. You don't necessarily need the extra procs you get from maxing out, opposed to the extra attack speed you get. Gives you more guaranteed damage, as opposed to unreliable. Lithium, starting to apply some pressure with the Liquid Fire's UGTFO, wants to stack up the Ancients one more time. Looks like that has actually been blocked though by the Radiant side, so they do have a Sentry Ward placed to ensure that he can't continue to get away with the shenanigans. Tumbling, off to a fantastic start, level 5 already. I believe he is leading the CS scoreboards. There's actually one CS behind, or one deny behind from Pork, so Pork also off to a great start. Mule, very rare to see him this heavily shut down. But that being said, it is a melee v range matchup, so Legion Commander always has to be wary of the fact that Pork can just continue to bully him with those right clicks, as well as that Crip Swarm Mule. He's eating it now. He does have that haste run, so he is just darting around the edges, using the overwhelming odds now to be able to find some CS. The biggest strength of the Legion Commander is if you do get up close and personal with the enemy mid, especially if they're ranged here and you start right-clicking them, you can rely on Moment of Courage procs to actually give yourself a fair amount of sustain, a fair amount of poke damage. Of course, against the Death Prophet, because Pork is playing so aggressively to keep Mule down at a low enough level that Mule can't actually run at him without risking death, since he throws out one right click, one Crip Swarm should be enough to be able to bring down Mule. Unless if Mule, of course, is able to get a little bit lucky and throw out the press attack in time. UGTFO, despite a bit of a slow start, actually has picked up his Arcane Boots, so he's actually doing a lot better than I expected. Did go for a very early point Gush, might get punished for this though, as Lithium comes with the Ice Path, great Ice Path coming from Lithium, catches out UGTFO, tumbling, going in for a few right clicks with those Wolves, and actually not doing much. Anchor Smash fly through UGTFO, he should be fine and dandy. He's going to waddle himself away, actually hanging very close by, waiting until he picks up level 6. If he gets level 6, they can turn that around with Ravage, not able to do so. The creep didn't die fast enough, and Lithium able to zone him out with the Ice Path. Tumbling, able to regen with that self, pushes them just barely at the lethal range. Very close play coming in from him. Duel actually being used on Pork, Purification Clamps from Broda, and this looks like first blood going to the hands of Mule. Never mind, Broda says the Omniscience needs this, he takes it with the hammer. It's a first early point and repel, as well as the points and purification really helping out. This is the synergy between the Legion Commander, as well as the Omni Knight, as well as the fact that you've got synergy between the Slark with the Pounce to pin them in place. The added synergy, of course, is the fact that Legion Commander's biggest weakness is when she's dueling, the enemy team's going to throw every nuke they have at her. If you repel Mule before he goes in, very difficult for them to deal with her, especially once Mule picks up a Blade Mail. Ken Killer looking to play a little bit aggressively against the JK, but he does have the Icarus dive, so Ken's just going to be forced to use the Dark Pack to be able to purge off the Fire Spirit damage. So good recognition coming in from Ken. It's the biggest strength of Slark, he's a very self-sufficient core. You can actually see Slark run against very aggressive offlaners like the Phoenix, or even against offlane heroes such as the Batrider, just due to the fact that he's got the Dark Pack to purge off the debuff that they're going to apply, whether that be Sticky Napalm or the Fire Spirits. Although that being said, Phoenix can always hold on to his Fire Spirits until the Dark Pack goes off and then simply reapply them. The biggest strength of Phoenix, especially since the JK almost has a Soul Ring, he's now got infinite sustain in this lane. He's got the sustain from the Tranquil Boots, he can always throw out the Fire Spirits with the Soul Ring, and because Icarus Dive costs the percentage of your HP, he's never going to be at risk unless he happens to put himself in an awful position, which he might be doing so as the standing Cox comes in, they're trying to bait out the Icarus Dive. Cox not able to get there in time, never mind turns around. Cox, if he's able to land this impale, he's not going to get there close and fast enough. No boots on Cox, really hurting him. This is the importance of supports being able to find their farm in the early stage of the game. Having boots just supports early on effectively gives you a kill in the enemy offlaner, especially if they're caught unprepared. UGTFO, getting zoned out with his wolves, looks like Isoc or Tumbling rather, went for the Vladimir's offering early on, so he's not a big fan of the Medallion of Courage. Of course, the biggest strength of the Medallion, aside from the fact that it gives you an incredible amount of killing power, the real reason why most pro players such as RTC go for the Medallion on Lycan is it increases your farm speed. So it means that if you're going to be, whereas a safe lane farmer, as Tumbling can now rotate into the jungle, leave Lithium alone to pick up his level 6, pick up his level 7 very early on against UGTFO, and he can still maintain his farm. Actually, he'll farm just as quickly in the jungle as he will in lane, and then once he picks up another item such as Vlad, then he can rotate back in the lane to apply a bit more pressure. Looks like they are going to be looking to take that tower. UGTFO playing very far forward, throws it to Ravage, gets an Anchor Smash on Tumbling. King Kill actually comes in and scores a kill over in Lithium. Isoc Lol Tumbling should be able to escape from this. Doesn't have enough mana to shapeshift, but UGTFO, good play coming in from him. Playing very aggressively as he knew that King Killer would be coming in to support him. Sets up with that Ravage, not able to find a kill on the core, but he's able to at least find an early kill on Kim, which is very important as it starts to accelerate his farm. Most likely going to be going for that Shadow Blade. He does actually get a pounce over on Tumbling, but Tumbling, he's in shapeshift form, so Direwolf is Stark. Still dancing around, gonna wander back home. Probably rotate to the jungle now to find his farm. Looks like he is going to completely forego the Medallion of Courage. So a little bit of a macro mistake just due to the fact that it does give you a drastic increase in DPS as well as farm. So there's no real reason for you to skip the Medallion early on the Lycanthrope. It makes up for the amount of money you put into it very quickly, just due to the acceleration in farm. It gives you a huge increase in killing power, the -7 armor, very early on. Provides you a drastic increase in DPS on the hero that's entirely built around physical damage. And your wolves, with the crit, actually do deal a fair amount of damage. Mule in that mid lane matchup, most likely going to be going for the Blink Dagger, very far from it. Unfortunately, it looks like he wasn't able to get the duel damage from that, as he was able to find the kill, or rather Broda was able to find first blood right after the duel ended, but Mule, he's not going to be too salty about that, just because he is able to find a kill on Pork. And Porky's already leading the CS scoreboards. They have to do everything they can to shut down the Death Prophet. This could be the biggest mistake that UGC mate are making in terms of the strategic level. The fact that Death Prophet's gone off to such a fantastic start. Since Pork level 8 with the phase boost very early on, probably going to be choosing to forego the Drums of Endurance, and a lot of players like to pick up on Death Prophet to go for a very early Yule Scepter. Early Yule Scepter does work very well against a Legion Commander, since you could use it to Cyclone the Legion Commander, which is dealing somebody else. You could also use it to Cyclone yourself to buy yourself more time, especially if you've got teammates coming in. Looks like he's actually having one of their players, Lithium, he's got about 1,000 ping, so very impressed he's actually able to land those Ice Paths, especially against a highly mobile target like the Tidehunter. Tumbling, rotating into the jungle, probably going to be maxing out that Feral Impulse and going into the traditional Lycanthrope build, so Vladimir's offering into the Necronomicon 3. Kin Killer, providing a little bit of assistance. This is actually something my flatmate does every time my internet goes down, and it seems to be working out fine for him. La 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 is the Ogre Magi, going for the conventional build, so no points in the Bloodlust, just going for pure aggression to the early second point, and the Ignite does pay for itself if you are playing very aggressively, or if you're able to get multicast, since the increased range does give you a lot more killing power, and once you pick up your Soul Ring, you could use it to help you find some farm. The biggest strength of the JK, going to be playing that Phoenix, the fact that Phoenix, natural mech carrier, and it's going to be his core item every single time. No other item provides Phoenix as much utility and as much power as the early mech. You usually see Soul Ring picked up before the mech, just to ensure that you can afford to throw out Fire Spirits and never have them off cooldown. But that being said, going for the mech rush, especially when you've got a very momentum-based lineup, the Death Prophet, Jakiro, as well as the Lycanthrope, can do a huge amount of work. Since mate, they're not going to be going for a mech anytime soon. The only one that can reliably finish a mech early is going to be UGTFO, and they most likely want him to go for the Blink Dagger, so that way he could go in to set up a duel for Mule, or Mule decides to blink in and engage with the duel, he could instantly follow up. So you have to find the Blink Dagger on Tidehunter in the next 4 to 5 minutes for him to be able to have his massive amount of impact. And with the Ancient stacked up, I believe it's only been stacked up twice, there's about 500 gold in the bank. So it's actually a little bit closer to it than you'd think. He's actually about halfway there if you factor in the Ancient gold. Looks like we are still having some issues coming in from Lithium on Tuzki and Husky. Pork in the mid lane matchup, now he can opt to go for a point in the Exorcism, since you usually see Death Prophets nowadays go for 4 points in the Witchcraft early on, leaving the Crypt Swarm at 3. So you go for 3 points in Crypt Swarm, then you stop, max out the Witchcraft, then you go back for the final point in the Crypt Swarm before you go for a point in the Exorcism. In some variations to the build, if you're being pressured very early on, or if your team wants to group up and fight now, then you actually choose to keep your Crypt Swarm at 3, and then go for an early point in Exorcism or an early point in the Grave Chill. Now the Grave Silence to ensure that you can take these early engagements. Looks like Lithium is good to go, and the JK. Actually, there's a sentry ward being placed this. They might have wanted to de-ward a safety ward placed by the JK, but I believe the safety ward was over there, so it could be a preventive or a preemptive sentry ward just in case they decide to place a defensive ward there. But that being said, this is usually where the Dire side would place their aggressive ward, so you can spot out rotations coming in from the tier 1. It's a very interesting sentry ward being placed there. Maybe there might have been a reason for this. But consider the fact that Phoenix not going to be going invisible anytime soon. A little bit surprised. Looks like Cox been giving me a little bit of farm space. Since Lion being going to pick up level 6, that Finger of Death, every single time it's off cooldown, it's a free kill. So you do want to make sure that Lion gets that level 6 early on. Looks like he's being very liberal with the usage of his Earthquake to guarantee his last hits, since he's got those clarities to work with. Kin Killer, if he's going for that Shadow Blade, he's about a third of the way there. If he's going for a Blink Dagger, halfway there. He could always surprise me and go for that Blink, but wouldn't be too surprised, since he does prefer to go for that Shadow Blade. Tumbling, now resuming back into the lane since he got the mana sustain from the Vladimir's offering as well as the lifesteal. Keep him hale and hardy. Mule follows up that bounty rune. Looks like they're actually grouping up in the top lane as La La La. Also rotating top to leave some experience of his own. King Killer playing very aggressively against the JK. But the JK knows that he's got Icarus dive, so he can always use that to get himself out of pounce. As well as the Supernova. King Killer won't have enough attack speed to actually burn through the Phoenix Egg before it pops, and the JK can always Fire Spirit him to ensure that he won't have enough attack speed to pop him. We're at a level 5, so we have a look at the experience coming in from the players, the support players especially. So it looks like Tuzki and Husky, they're actually off to a bit of a bad start just due to the fact that Ogre Magi La 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 is level 4, so support efficiency, especially your support's finding level 6 early on, especially in a hero like the Ogre Magi, is incredibly important, as it does drastically impact their teamfight effectiveness in these early skirmishes, which are going to be so crucial. If we have a look at net worth, looks like the 2 cores from Tuzki and Husky, so Pork as well as Tumbling, and the 1 and the 2 respectively, are going to be the ones leading the CS scoreboards. As the JK actually off to a bit of a poor start, but he's still doing a lot better than UGTFO. So Mule actually off to a very difficult start just because he hasn't been able to do anything against Pork in that mid lane matchup. Every time he did go into lasted or deny, he's going to be eating a fair amount of right clicks. It's very rare to see Mule flat out lose to mid lane like this. That being said, Cox now rotating in for a smoke gank. He's not actually able to close the distance in time. This is the power of Pork, who actually pops the Exorcism. They're ready to fight. Looks like Mule going to be backing himself off. The JK comes in. He does have the Supernova available if he decides to initiate with his face. Eats the Impale, so Cox, saving the day, gets 2 of that Impale, ensures that Mule's able to disengage, as Broda also placed a Repel earlier. He's got Press the Attack as well as Boulder Charges to keep himself alive for now. The instant 2-man rotation coming in from Tuzki or Husky. I believe it was the JK as well as La La La, as Lithium was already waiting in the wings with that Ice Path trying to draw them back. Although that being said, because Tuzki or Husky weren't able to find a kill, if they're not able to kill this town, they won't be able to do so as the Exorcism wears off. They now throw a 2-minute window of opportunity to the enemy team. Yeah, no, mate, they know that Exorcism is down. Every single time Exorcism is down, you have to try to push for fights, push for kills against the Death Prophet, because it does drop the vast majority of your DPS in these early engagements. It's the main reason why you want to pick the Death Prophet is every single time you have the Exorcism, you could group up in the enemy team, they can't really do anything to you. You run at them, especially once you pick up the Yule Scepter, they can't kill you, and you should be able to play very aggressively against them. So this means that Pork, he's going to be put on the back burner for 2 minutes. He does almost have his Yule Scepter, actually, has it about 200 gold. So 13-minute phase Yule's excellent start coming in from Pork. King Killer, looks like he is going to be going for the Shadow Blade. Goes in on the JK, actually whiffs his pounce. Icarus Star coming through, La La La. Looking to go for a stun. King Killer actually preemptively pops the Shadow Dance a little bit early, so it's a 55-second cooldown for him. Not the end of the world, since because he's out of mana, because he doesn't have any way to reliably initiate, probably won't be ganking, so this is the crucial difference. Or rather, the timing window for the slot. Before you get your core item, you don't want to be going for ganks, just because it's very risky. If you don't get them, it can put yourself too far behind, so you want to play very passively, find as much farm as possible, go for the last hits. Once you get that big item, you want to find the Shadow Blade, but in the first 14 minutes for it to really be worthwhile, then you want to start playing aggressively, then you want to start going for pickoffs. Otherwise, you put yourself at risk of falling too far behind. Because Slark, much like a Klinks, is such a momentum-based carry, if you're not able to get the timing down for your core item, it really delays your ability to participate in the game. And Klinks, if you're going for the Orca and Malevolence build, you want it but in the first 14 to 15 minutes. Otherwise, if you go for the Eternal MV build, which is Soul Ring into the Blink Dagger, then you have a little bit more wriggle room, just because you can choose to fight the instant you pick up the Blink Dagger. So you usually have a much easier window. King Killer is actually holding onto his Shadow Amulet to make sure that he doesn't telegraph the enemy team. So from their point of view, they might assume he's still going Blink, since that's the conventional item that most pro players can be going for. UGTFO playing very aggressively against Tumbling. Throws in the Anchor Smash, he looks like he's fronting as if he's going to throw out that Ravage, chooses to hold on to it, so he knows that there's no support coming into him anytime soon. Ain't no cavalry coming when you've lost your tier 1, just because you don't have the window for your teammates to be able to get that in time, especially since they have to walk such a long way once they TP Mule. All things being said, despite having such a poor spot, does pick up a 14-minute Blink Dagger, so now he's ready to rock. Looks to initiate over into the top lane, as there are 4 heroes from Tuzki or Husky grouping up. What the Lycanthrope, going to be played by Tumbling, continuing to free farm the bottom lane. Could be a little bit of a mistake. It's the biggest strength of the Medallion of Courage early on in Lycan, as it lets you fight early. You got that shapeshift, so that 650 movement speed to ensure no one's running away from you. If you decide to play Lycan as a conventional one, where you farm the entire game, not going to be as effective, unless you're able to pick up a very, very early Necronomicon 3. Well, I say that, Mule. Blink Initiate over on Pork, he's repelled us. There's nothing they could do. Finger of Death actually flies through. They're not actually going to be able to kill him. Finally, they are able to do so. Overwhelming ult. Supernova actually coming through from, I believe that's the JK. Actually just burns down Broda, King Killer. Shadow Dancing, but he's keeping himself alive for now. Shadow Dance has worn off, using Dark Pact to purge off Fiery Spirits. Mule dancing around. Ravage actually comes for UGTFO, late to the party. Shows up with a bit of a bang though. The JK does have Echo Slap. Never mind, he didn't use that earlier, put himself in position, gets killed for that. UGTFO, he shows up late, but he shows up with beer. Well, in this case with the Ravage, he's able to at least find 1 kill for his team. And Mule, this is the combination we're talking about. Repel into Blink Duel, there's absolutely nothing he could do. Lithium throughout the Ice Path, Mule laughed at him, then Broda burned to death because of the JK. But, I mean, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Looks like Broda was the one broken in this case. La La La, playing aggressively against UGTFO, gets a Fire Blast Pork. Looks like he actually whipped the first Crypt Swarm, uses the Yule Scepter to reset to follow up with the second one. UGTFO should be taking a death. King Killer watches, but there's only so much he could do. He does actually have a Shadow Blade though, so he is actually able to hit the 16-minute mark, so not the 14-minute Shadow Blade, which is the optimal time. 16 minutes still not too shabby, just because it's early enough that the enemy team, they're not going to want to invest gold into detection yet, just because their supports can't really afford to. Lithium just barely can afford a set of sentries. La La La, he can afford sentries, but it's going to delay his next item. Although that being said, He actually going for a bit of an unconventional build from La La La, choosing to go for a split level of Fire Blast and the Ignite. You want to go for the 4th point in Fire Blast, just especially once you pick up Multicast, since Fire Blast was nerfed in terms of damage, to compensate for the fact that Multicast now has a higher chance of proccing, so 40% up from 25. King Killer, looking to engage in the top lane. He does actually have the Shadow Blade at the ready, looks like on the bottom lane while that was happening. They find 2 kills. The JK, as well as Tumbling, able to find that with that double damage rune. Don't underestimate the damage, and Cox gets melted by the Multicast. Yeah, no, mate. King Killer goes in against Polk. Might actually be able to find this kills. Got Shadow Dance at the ready. He is able to find 1. Should be able to find 2 as La La La. Fleet for his life. Macro Fire being used. Gush comes in from UGTFO, showing off his own Blink Dagger. Lithium gets the Ice Path on Ken, who's actually burning inside the fire. But through the fire and the flames, Ken perseveres. Looks like UGTFO does find a double kill with the Anchor Smash. And while this is happening, Tumbling the bottom lane, doing what Lycan does best, split pushing. Looks like his Necronomicon minions died just in front of Broder, so taunting him with that potential 200 gold. Broder looks like he actually went for Arcane Boot instead of going for the Soul Ring, which he usually prefers, since Soul Ring has a much easier build-up, and since Omni Knight, usually Phase Boots gives you a lot more maneuverability. Well, in this case, you probably want the Arcane Boots to provide mana for the rest of your team. And Cox, he's going to be going for Tranquil Boots. Tranquil Boots are usually preferable in the line, because it does mitigate his 2 biggest weaknesses, which is low maneuverability, as well as his low base armor. The JK will be interesting to see what Phoenix chooses to go for next. You usually see something along the lines of Shiva's Guard. Rod of Aoi also is a very powerful pickup in the Phoenix. It gives you that snare to set up for your Sunstrike, or your Sunray rather, as well as to be able to provide that additional snare to set up for the rest of your team. And it's giving you more hits coming in from Tumbling. Broder getting scattered out with the Wolf as well as Cox, so both the sports. Good play coming in from Tumbling. Looks like he is using the Wolf micro, so if you just M-click your Wolf on the enemy hero, Wolf follow them, they're invisible, so they're not going to know them anytime soon. La 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 gets spotted out by Ken. There's actually a ping coming through, so they realize that he might be there. First hit, second hit, now comes through the pounce. Looks like they should be able to find the kill over on La La La. Looks like Dark Pact actually doesn't purge off Repel. Well, that happens. Duel being used over in the JK. Where's your Supernova now? Finger Death used just in case. Cox fingers him in the butthole just to ensure he gets that kill. Ken, he's silenced, but he's angry. He's also in the shadows at the moment. He's got Shadow Blade coming off cooldown very soon. Chooses not to engage. So Rare Restraint coming in from Ken, usually a very aggressive yellow player, usually diving tier 2s 10 minutes into the game. This time showing some restraint, using that Shadow Blade to scout out very aggressively, just to see where Tumbling is hiding. So Tumbling, most likely going to be hiding in the jungle, farming some neutrals. Looks like he decides to TP out. So they're playing their Lycanthrope the same way you'd play in Nature's Prophet, which is good in the sense that he is going to be finding a very early Necronomicon 3, so he should be hitting the 23-minute mark for that Necro 3. While that happens, UGTFO just gets cleaned up by Pork. Throws out the cheeky Crips one to finish him off. Looks like Pork most likely going for the harder Taraskaroth, or just with the cheeky Vip booster into a BKB. Do you want to have a BKB against the Tidehunter just to ensure you don't get Ravaged? But that being said, because there's Duel as well as Ravage, it's very difficult to work around both of them, since Pork, he's going to be the dual target every single time. If Mule spots out Pork, he's always going to want to duel Death Prophet. That's because if you could kill Death Prophet before she gets her Exorcism off, or just as she gets her Exorcism off, if you're able to burst her down in time, which you should be able to with the Finger of Death, massive team fight swing into your hands. If you're not able to do so, then you're going to be eating a huge amount of damage. Kin, he's been repelled up, so you've got that dual versatility. With the repel, he does go in on Tumbling. Tumbling actually locked in place. Shapeshifting, but the Wolf isn't going to really do anything. He is actually able to run King Killer. Looks like Guardian Angel being used on Broder, who's actually burning alive inside the Spirits. Spirits actually disregard Guardian Angel, interesting to note. Pork, locked inside Duel, but Mule gets blown apart. UGTFO finally comes with a Ravage a little bit late, but better late than never. He finds 2 with that. He does eat the returning stun coming in from the Supernovas. The JK might actually be able to find a kill UGTFO. Backing himself away now. King Killer re-engaging with that Shadow Blade. Should be able to find a pounce. Never mind. Sentry's being dropped. The Kin might be taking your death there. He cannot afford to die. Dark Pact being used to purge off the snare coming in from the Fiery Spirits. Lithium should actually be taking a death for UGTFO. Never mind. Might not be able to get there in time. Cox running in, but the cooldowns aren't available for the Hex as well as the Impale. The JK, the only survivor, looks like he did go for the Ogre Club. We do occasionally see Heaven's Halberd build coming in from Phoenix, because the strength does help buff your Sunray damage. But interesting to note that the Exorcism Spirit ignore the Guardian Angel bot, since Guardian Angel gives yourself immunity to physical damage, or about 9,999 armor. So interesting interaction. I'm not too sure if this is what they intended, since in Dota 1 I believe it does block damage coming in from the Exorcism Ghost. Since the Ghosts do deal physical damage, unless they've changed that, no, never mind, yeah. Although that being said, it does pass spell immunity, so maybe that's the rationalization behind it. Could be a mechanical difference between Dota 1 and Dota 2, much like Elder Titan's Natural Order interaction with Creeps, where it actually amplifies magic damage instead of simply resetting it to 0, the same way it would for heroes. Tumbling, Necronomicon 2, looks like he should have that Necronomicon 3 in the next 2 minutes, especially at the rate he's farming. But Lycanthrope wasn't too relevant in that last engagement. Looks like he did pick up some dual damage though. So he's got that going for him. Mule, saddest Legion Commander of his life, only got 14 damage, and he's given away just as much to the enemy team. But that being said, does have the Blade Mail, and this is where the Legion Commander really hits her prime. Because you've got the Blade Mail to ensure that they want to focus you because you're dueling your teammate, but at the same time you really can't, just because she's got the heal coming in from the press attack as well to Moment of Courage. So she's going to be returning a lot more damage than you're going to be dealing to her. UGTFO actually going to be going for what appears to be a Shiva's Guard Rush with the Mystic Scepter. Titans can also of course go for the Sheepstick Rush, but Shiva's Guard usually makes a lot more sense just because you tend to go for the Refresher Orb as one of your core items, so going for Shiva's Guard then going Refresher Orb means you've got enough mana to use your entire complement of spells, instead of just having enough mana to double Ravage, especially once you pick up that level 3 Ravage. Rodo looks like he's going to be the one doing some warding as well, some de-warding. Invis in the bottom lane. He's aware of it, but looks like he's not going to go pick that up, so he might be saving that for Mule, who is actually looking to play very aggressively against Tumbling. We also have some TP support coming in from Cox. Mule though, he's going to be scouted out by those wolves, so that's just to farm his creeps instead. Sentry Wood being dropped. The fact that the supports from Tuzki or Husky are coming prepared to these fights, dropping sentries to ensure that every time Ken engages, they are able to try to force him to disengage, or they're able to prevent him from getting that first hit in, really does hinder the effectiveness of that Shadow Blade. Rhoda unfortunately revealing that he is invisible to Pork by showing off the Repel, or rather the Degen Aura. So going for that early point in the Degen Aura, very interesting build coming from him. You usually see Omnilite players forego point in the Degen Aura, especially when you're playing him in that 4 position role, and choose to max out the Repel as soon as possible, just because the 12-second magic immunity really does do a huge amount of work. Paul's coming in once again from Lithium, who actually has disconnected, so it looks like he is having a few internet difficulties. If we have a look at last hits, Tumbling by far leads the scoreboard by a country mile, but in terms of net worth, because he hasn't been too engaged in these fights and he hasn't been getting too many kills compared to Kin, it's almost equal. So this is the weakness of the way Tumbling's choosing to play the Lycanthrope. It's the reason why when teams like Evil Geniuses pick up the Lycanthrope, they play him very aggressively and very actively early on. And it's the reason why you see Bottle into Medallion of Courage with just brown boots on Lycanthrope, then you go into the Vladimir's offering. So that way you could fight early on just because you do so much damage in the first 20 minutes with that Medallion of Courage. With that Shapeshift, because you've got one of the best steroid abilities in the game, that Feral Impulse, you've got a free crit built in from the Wolf. So it does help you engage very early on, and you do have the fact that you've got 650 movement speed. Nobody is going to outrun you with that 650 movement speed. They can't snare you, they can't even try to body block you because you have unit walking. So it does weaken the window of effectiveness for the Lycanthrope because he's playing so farm heavy. Of course, the strength of this, the fact that he has hit his timing window, so he's got that 23-minute Necronomicon 3, which is the point where you've got enough damage from the Necronomicon that the enemy team, they're going to be forced to disengage because they can't kill it without eating 600 damage, and they can't afford to eat 600 damage then. So you can use that to take fights very aggressively. But because Ken's actually pretty close to him in terms of net worth, just because he's been finding so many kills, fortunately whips that pouch. He did Dark Pact in time though, so he looks to go for a killer on Lithium. And usually TFO cleans it up with the Ravage. La La La's well caught in a bad position, was just those two. Never mind, here comes Mule with the duel. 2-second tool instantly pops La La La. Pork fleeing for his life, eats the overwhelming ult. King Killer has to bounce the trap into a rock in a hard place, and Cox comes in from the side with a cheeky finger of death. They're able to find 2. Never mind, looks like that was 3 with the Death Prophet going down. They're going to look to take the Roshan. Never mind, they don't actually have enough damage and choose to disengage instead. So very interesting also to note the fact that Tumbling hasn't gone for Roshans. The added benefit of Medallion of Courage is it does help accelerate your Roshan time. Shaves off about 10 to 15 seconds. Just because you hit so much harder by reducing his armor, as opposed to, it's cheaper to reduce armor on Roshan than it is to buff your own damage, to the point that it'll give you comparable return. And all things considered, especially since he's been left alone in this part of the map for such a long time, hasn't gone for Roshan at all, so very interesting play coming from Tumbling. He is playing the Lycanthrope the same way you'd play a Nature's Prophet, but in that case you might as well just pick the Nature's Prophet to have much more reliable split pushers. And the biggest strength of Lycanthrope is this high teamfight engagement early on, especially the new school way people play him, with the rework to the Shapeshift. If you decide to play him that passive farming route, while you still can win games, just because you have such a massive amount of pushing power, should you win a fight, you then put that and toss that bit into the last part with being able to win that fight. Just because Slark is very quickly catching up in terms of net worth. Actually, Slark almost is an Iascardi. Looks like he has found an Iascardi, never mind, I stand corrected. So 25-minute Iascardi in Slark. There's nothing the Necro 3 is going to do to the Slark, since Slark, with the Shadow Blade, the Shadow Dance, and the Iascati can outfight the Lycanthrope. So Lycan's actually completely missed his timing window, so the first 20 minutes when he could go God mode and go ham on enemy carries, has completely bypassed him since Kin. With the Essence shift, will actually trade right clicks far more favorably than the Lycanthrope will, even with the crit, especially since you've got the attack speed snare coming in from the Iascati and the sheer amount of stats, all things considered. La la la. So walking into Kin's range, and Kin scouts him out, checks to make sure that any other teammates around, might be alone. Cox actually TPing out, so decides maybe not to go for this one. Also the added fact that Shadow Dance does reveal when they have wards. Kin though scouts out Pork, or where the Pork scouts him out. You'll Sept it up into the air. Does have Shadow Dance though, instantly pops it. So even though he's caught with the Grave Silence, should be able to swagger on out of there. So quick reflexes coming out from Kin to ensure that he doesn't get caught out of position. Looks like UGTFO did finish out Shiva's Guard to provide you that extra form of AoE control and damage, which is quite considerable considering the fact that Tide, he's the most likely hero to hit 4 or 5 heroes every single time with that Shiva's Guard. Phoenix also, very powerful candidate. Looks like he is going to be going for the Heaven's Halberd route, I believe, with that early Sange pickup. The nice thing about this is it does buff your Sunray damage and it does give you cheap stats for the money that you expend. The drawback is Phoenix isn't going to be right-clicking anyone anytime soon. You're not going to be sitting there heading people as a Phoenix. You're going to be throwing out the Fiery Spirits, diving into the enemy team behind them to drop a Supernova, to force them to turn around to hit you instead. So the Sange part is not really going to be as effective as you'd like. If you went for something much more active like the Shivas, you pop it as you dive, you've got the extra attack speed snare to help keep yourself alive when you Supernova. Or even go for something like an Aghanim Scepter if you wanted to bail out his core. The Heaven's Halberd pickup can be quite useful, but because it's Repel and because it's a Dark Pact, both the Legion Commander with Press the Attack, as well as the Slark, you've got two core heroes that are very self-sufficient, because they can purge off any form of CC that comes their way. Mule looks like he is going for the Maelstrom, so choosing to prioritize attack speed, just to increase his likelihood of getting more damage in within that duel. Although that being said, one of the things you have to keep in mind with Legion Commander, I'm not too sure if they've actually changed this now that they've reworked it so it no longer disables passives. But Maelstrom used to actually be disabled during duel because it effectively triggered a mini Doom on both heroes. They might have changed it with the fact that passive abilities now work through duel. Otherwise, the only reliable damage pickup for the Legion Commander is going to be the Desolator, because that's one of the few. A buff placer will still work through duel, and because it's applying that negative 7 armor, it does increase the damage that you're getting in from your Moment of Courage. That being said, if he does choose to go for the Molnir, applying that Molnir buff himself as he blinks in, can be quite powerful, as well as the fact that it also helps accelerate your farm. So Maelstrom, even if it doesn't work during duel, still going to be a very powerful pickup. It's due to the fact that outside of duel, gives him a little bit more damage, helps him farm faster, and it gives him more attack speed which he could work with in duel. So even without the lightning procs, still a fairly effective pickup. But that being said, Desolator is usually a lot more cost effective, or the Assault Cuirass, especially since Mule's playing a little bit from behind. But Mule, despite not having too many duels under his belt, still is a reasonable threat, especially because he's got that Repel to work with. And Cox, it looks like he actually went for 4-star, so he went for the defensive pickup instead of going for the Blink Dagger, which you usually want to go for as the line to give yourself that instant engage. The advantage, of course, of the 4-star is you could use it on your allies, and you could use it even if you've taken damage. You do have a little bit of diagramming happening on the map, as it looks like Mule, with that Invis Rune scouting out the enemy jungle. Broder, Converge again, does get scouted out with a Wolf Toe. Looks like he went for Drums of Endurance, providing some cheap stats, as well as the movement and attack speed buff. UGTFO going ham, catching them in between a rock and a hard place. He's got the Ravage available, he actually catches out 3. Fantastic Ravage coming from him. Mule instantly duels Pork. They have to kill him, they do with the Purification. Looks like I'm now having some internet issues. I do apologize, I hope this does resolve itself fairly soon. Hopefully it should be resuming itself fairly soon. Okay, looks like I'm back. My Dota 2 game is crashing. So for those of you just tuning in, there's a huge fight happening and I'm just disconnected. I'm just reconnecting shortly. But from what I saw, they were able to pick off Pork. Looks like Ledger K should also be taking a death. They were able to do so. Actually, GG well played, being called. So just my luck, I actually missed the defining 25 to 30 minute team fight that actually tails the game. Not too happy with that one, but looks like we are going into game number 2. Yeah, no, mate. Very decisive game 1 going to their hands, and we'll have a look at analysis for why the game turned out so badly. Tumbling, fantastic start in Lycanthrope, exceptional amount of farm, but this is the reason why Lycanthrope, when he is picked up, he's played the completely different way. You cannot afford to play Lycanthrope the way you used to back in the TI2 era, back in the old school days of Chinese Dota, where Lycanthrope used to be first pick, first ban in every single game. You can't afford to play Lycanthrope that same way anymore, because you've got so many new face rush cores, such as the Slug, such as Legion Commander, that get in your face, shut you down early, and take fights against the rest of your team. Even though Kin had 2/3 the amount of last hits as Tumbling, he still had about the same amount of net worth. Just because he was finding kills, he was farming heroes. So even though though his Shadowblade timing was actually 2 minutes off, it should have actually been 14 minutes. But he was actually fairly delayed, as his first 2 gank attempts weren't too successful. Still had higher game impact while maintaining the same amount of farm. So it goes to show you the importance of finding kills as the carry position farm. And it's the reason why you see a decline. I mean, if you wanted to play the game the way Tumbling played the game by constantly farming, dodging fights, and going for split push, you might as well pick them in anti-mage. That would have given you a lot more carry power, a lot more late game. Lycanthrope's a hero that wins the game in the mid game, because he comes online so quickly, because he's able to flash farm, because you have the macro advantage of being able to take Roshan, as well as being able to farm the jungle at the same speed you farm the lane, so it frees up a lane, effectively providing another lane of farm for your heroes. So it means that one of your 4 position heroes suddenly upgrades into a 3. So if you're not able to capitalize on Lycanthrope's strength, he really does taper off. Even though he had such a great start, just wasn't able to control the mid game. So past the 20-minute mark, because he played so passively, even though he got the Necronomicon 3, just wasn't able to take enough towers to take any fights with it. So a bit of a pity, since him and Pork, fantastic CS score, and they were able to control that lane quite effectively, but mate, just able to pull through with a lot of mid-game action. So going to be taking a quick break, and we'll be right back for game number 2. Stay tuned.